Tá fáilte romh go dtí ollscoil manúd don océad speisialta is in ollscoile. You're very, very welcome to the university. John McGinnity is my name, and I'm Admissions Officer, Assistant Registrar here at the university. And we're delighted that you could join us here for our open day for this session on going to college and transition. Just with me here on the panel is Judith Caffrey, who's the Admissions and Communications Officer here for the Admissions Office, and our student, Shira Cannon, who is going to be talking to you a little bit more about her transition to college and her experiences. And Dr. Laura Creavy, who's our Schools Liaison Officer, who'll be joining back towards the end of the webinar to answer questions and help and assist the panel later in the webinar. So just to start, I'll just kick off with some slides to say, one of the things to say to you is that if you have any questions or anything that you're uncertain about, please feel free to just put your questions into the chat, and we'll either take them live later on or answer them as we go. So the whole purpose of today is to give you the opportunity to ask us any questions and to get a sense in this particular session about the whole CAO process and then transition to college. So just share the slides if that's okay. Hope that's coming through okay there, Judith. Yeah. So basically, just in terms of the actual presentation and in terms of the summary, we want to just talk to you this morning about the aspect of going to college. And we appreciate, as a Leaving Cert student or as a parent or guardian, or if you're mature or QQI, that sense of you thinking, is college the right thing for me? Is it the right thing? You know, is there a benefit in it? And we'll be kind of discussing that in more detail. There's the one thing we're conscious of is the transition that happens when students are going to college and the sense of differences between school and university. And there's a number of things that take place, and we'll talk a bit about that just to give you the sense of a reassurance in that regard. Something we're very strong on is research, and that people are actually going to be doing the right degree, the right subject that they feel is right for them. And then obviously there's the whole pathways and frameworks here. Maynooth University as a university, very welcoming. We've lots of different routes into the university across undergraduate, postgraduate. And one of the things that I just want to show you is that there's many, many different pathways to get a place here at Maynooth University. I think one of the focuses of the session will be the CAO process, because often people feel I could make a mistake, and people may have, as a student, done a lot of work and then find that it just hasn't worked out for them. So we're going to give you useful tips and go through the process so that you're fully au fait. And I think importantly, as we mentioned earlier on, is the Q&A is there for you. So just place your questions into the chat and we'll take them as we go. So one of the things we want to say is that in a sense, college will give you the opportunity to study something that you have a passion for. Something, it might be a particular degree, might be a particular subject, or a couple of subjects, a range of subjects together. And one of the things that you find is at Leaving Cert, and if you're doing A-levels or other subjects across the world, there's a combination of different subjects that you're taking at that time, when in fact, what you really want is to narrow down on 2 or 3 different disciplines. And you can do that at university. And then one of the things that I'd also say is the whole aspect of social, the issue around it. May be in school at the moment, you're finding you're so busy, you don't get a chance to get involved in the clubs and societies. But here at Maynooth, we've over 200 different clubs and societies. So you can really get engaged in things that you want to do. And it might be that you're somebody who's very involved in sport or drama or debating. But here at Maynooth, the societies are broad ranging and they're very welcoming. And it costs €1 to join any of the societies. So in some sense, you have a choice to do whatever it is you want. The wonderful thing here at Maynooth University is our links across the world. We've partnerships with over 200 universities right across the world. So by coming to Maynooth University, it's in fact a platform, a springboard to wherever you want to go on an international abroad. We actually extend that welcome to all our students who want to take an international. So the study abroad element would be outside the EU. The Erasmus scheme is there to support students with some funding within the EU and across the EU countries. And then finally, we just want to say, and there will be times during the year when a student will say, is it worth it all? I mean, all of the effort that I'm putting in, I'm working hard, I'm working the evenings, I'm getting up early to study and so on. Will I get a return on that investment? And the absolute, without a doubt, is yes. I mean, what we find is that when, for instance, our labour economists here at the university and our economics department look at what's the return you get for your college education, and it's estimated about 15% per year So for every minute, for every hour of the rest of your working life, that sense of you're getting a return on that investment in terms of a premium over and above somebody who hasn't gone on to college. But more important than that, or maybe as important, is a sense around job satisfaction, the sense of working in an area that you love. And by working through a college education, what we find is that people go on to lead much more job satisfied life and more fulfilling lives because they're working in areas that they're very happy in. One of the things we just want to say is that there will be a change, and we talk about transitions in life, and transitions being on the one hand filled with a sense of expectation, a sense of hope, a sense of aspiration, but also sometimes transitions kind of cause some anxiety or nervousness or a sense of, will this be the right thing for me? And what we find here is certainly at Maynooth universities, there's a significant number of student supports that will help you in that, and student societies and so on. But it is fair to say that we are a campus university community now of over 15,000 students, almost 2,000 staff. So there's about 17,000 people here each day. So what you find is that it is a large institution and probably maybe 20 times larger than the school that you're going to. The other thing I'd say is that the timetable, in some way here, you could have a lecture maybe at 9 o'clock in the morning, something at 11, then nothing until 2 o'clock, and then something at 5 o'clock. So it's a different type of day than what you'd be used to at school. But very quickly you get a sense of your timetable, and very quickly a sense of what is it that works for you. There is some sense in terms of the nomenclature and the names you'll hear when you go to college around semesters and modules, but quickly you'll get into the sense of understanding what they mean. All our subjects here are on the basis of credits, so in some way you're looking at that as well. But the wonderful thing here is that before you know it, you've got a whole sense of knowing that new currency and being able to work around it and work with it. The nice thing here at the university is that our assessment is basically every semester. So every 12 weeks, our students take continuous assessment and take final exams, and they move on to new materials. So the sense whereby at Leaving Cert or A-level, or if you're doing studies across the continent, whereby you're working on a 2-year curriculum and then having to produce in an exam 2 years of work, that normally doesn't happen at university. So in a way, one of the things I'd be saying is that what you'll find in college is, because of the continuous assessment and the movement and subject choice and the independence and flexibility of being able to choose your new subjects and modules each after every 12 weeks, it's a much more friendly way to be assessed, a much more friendly way to be learning. And so what we find is our students enjoy it much more so than in senior cycle in second level. Just sources of information. One of the things we'd be saying is, and I'm conscious today at the university, it is a virtual open day, and we're hoping in April and June, we'll have an on-campus physical open here at the university, because it is a beautiful university. It's described as the most beautiful university in Western Europe. So in a sense, the setting here is second to none. And so we're really hoping that in April, you'll be able to join us. But one of the things we'd be saying to you is, thanks for joining us today. Please spend the day having a look, joining our webinars, having a look at the presentations that we've provided for you, ask questions that you have. But one of the things that we're saying here is there is an actual button that you can download a prospectus, so all the details will be there, talking to your guidance counselor. The other thing we'd be saying is that in terms of due diligence, talk to students who are studying the area that you're thinking about, talking to people who are doing the job that you're thinking of doing, because in some way you can say to them, what's the aspects of your job that you love? What are the aspects you're not overly keen on? And it's, in some sense, there's a slight selfishness to it, but one of the things we'd be saying is, for you, this is the right aspects, because it's your decision to make the right choice for you, to go to the right course, the right university, and so on. The other thing we'd be very keen on is that you spend time looking and drilling down and seeing what would be the modules, the subjects that I'd be studying in first year, second year, third year, the internships, the placements. And we have about 3,000 modules here on our course finder, the university course finder. So you can drill down and see in each of our degrees, what are the modules, and each module, what is the content, look at the timetable, how it's been assessed, how it's been delivered. That's all there for you. The other thing just to mention is, and I'm conscious there's a range of things. So one of the things that we'll talk about a little bit later on is the cost of college. And we'll go through the financial aspect, and then the aspect of the here and there scheme, which we'll talk about, which is the higher education access route and the disability access route to education. But there's two other websites here you can see, which is Qualifax and Careers Portal. And they're free websites, and they give you the capacity to be able to go in and say, well, I'm interested in science, or I'm interested in law or business or so on. And you can drill down and see what are the courses right across the country. And as a student and as a parent, it's all at your fingertips, where you're able to actually drill down and see what are the choices available for me, what were the points last year, and so on. That's all there for you. The one thing I'd say about Maynooth University is that we're very conscious that university gives a student an opportunity to study something they love, develop as a person, but we're very, very conscious that it's transformational as well. People transform through the experience of being here with us. And so we want to create that breadth of pathways and make Maynooth University accessible. So in the framework of qualifications here, you can see on the left-hand side, it's level 1, and it goes around like a wheel to level 10. And level 1 is primary certificate education here in Ireland. Level 3 is junior certificate, and I'm conscious that people are joining in from all over the world, but this is the framework of qualifications in the Irish education system. And level 4 and 5 would be the leaving certificate, and we've 2 levels, ordinary level and higher level. And a student who's doing a range of ordinary level subjects would be level 4 notionally, and level 5 then would be the honours, where a student's doing a range of honours subjects. And then the CAO picks up from that point, and there's on one list of level 6 and 7, which are 2-year higher certificates and 3-year ordinary degrees. And that's one list of 10 choices across level 6s and 7. And then in the CAO, there's also a level 8, which are the degrees that Maynooth University offer. All of our degrees are level 8 honours degrees that would give you the qualification to go on and do postgraduate study. And there's about 1,500 courses in total, about 40 degree programs here at Maynooth University at level 8. And the CEO will look after level 6, 7 and 8 in the framework. Now, students here at Maynooth University have an option then to want to do postgraduate study. About 2,000 students studying at postgraduate level, where you're saying, I want to study further on in the discipline or the subject that I was studying at undergraduate, or indeed there are conversion courses where you can move to other areas. And then level 10 would be a doctorate, which would be 4 years full-time or indeed 6 years part-time. So one of the things is just to say that a student has a breadth of progression here in the Irish university system, the Irish education system. And the other thing is that you don't have to do each of these levels sequentially. So you can move from a level 4 or 5 at Leaving Cert right up to level 8, which is the honours degree program here at Maynooth University. And what I just want to mention here is that there are different pathways of progression, and some students will join us here from the university. This year in 2021, we had 3,500 students, 3,600 students joined us. So 300 places would have come through the QQI PLC route, whereby students would have done a year in a college of further education and then used that as a progression to join us here. Other students would have joined us through the Institutes of Technology framework, maybe a level 6 and transferred into second year here, perhaps. We had about 300 students joined us as mature students, maybe not presenting a Leaving Cert or a school leaving qualification, but presenting and liaising with us on their life experience. And we've about 3,000 students then would join on the basis of school experience, 100 or so coming from countries all over the world. So in some ways, students will join us through different pathways, and we do set aside a quota of places every year for mature students and a quota of places for QQI PLC students as well. Now you might say, John, well, that's very well and good. What is the competition? Like, how competitive is it? In terms of Maynooth University, last year we had 17,000 applications for those 3,600 places. Across the entire CAO Central Applications Office system, there was 85,000 people applied. And last year in 2021, there was about 57,000, 58,000 people doing the Leaving Certificate. So sometimes people feel that those two are the same, but in fact, they're very different. So about 35,000 people applied to the CAO who weren't doing a Leaving Certificate in 2021. And indeed, about 10,000 people who did a Leaving Certificate in 2021 didn't apply to the CAO. So it's an interesting, they're not one and the same. People often say, aren't they one and the same, but not so. And then if you said, well, how many of those actually got a place in a higher education institution in the country? It's about 50,000 of the 85,000. So not every single person who applied got a place. But if we add back the places in the College of Further Education system in Ireland and add in apprenticeships and other opportunities as well, there's almost a place for every single student who wants to progress in their education after second level. So we'd be very much optimistic for students as we go forward into the future. So very briefly then, I just want to show you the map here of the CAO. It's actually open and thousands of people have applied at this stage. The early closing date is the 20th January at 5:15, and there's a fee of €30. And we'd be recommending people to get online, make your application. You might say at this stage, I don't know what choices, what courses, and that's okay. We'll talk about that in a moment, but you can certainly make the application at this stage. And then the CEO closes the €45 fee on the 1st of February. So restricted applications, and those are the courses like here in Maynooth University, music, MH103, community and youth work, MH116. Those are degrees that you have to apply before the 1st of February because we have assessments that take place during spring. And the CEO then is very considerate. So basically what it says is that students are going to be very busy taking mocks after Christmas, doing their oral exams after Christmas and so on. So they close down the CEO, and what happens then, it opens up on the 5th of May. And from the 5th of May until the 1st of July, you can actually change your mind as often as you wish. One of the things just to be considered of is that colleges are looking for a basic entry academic level. And here at Maynooth University would be 2 H5s and 4 O6s and a H7. You do need to pass in Irish and a pass in English, but not if you have an exemption or if you haven't been born in Ireland and haven't been educated in Ireland, you don't need Irish, the Irish language. One of the things just to mention though is many of our degrees have a course requirement. So it might be in science, you have to have a science subject. In engineering, you have to have a H4 in maths, although we have a second chance maths exam. So there's various requirements that are there. And then we assess on the basis of points, and we'll show you that in a moment. The other thing I just want to mention is that each year there are degrees that were not in the handbook that colleges introduce, or other degrees are in the CEO handbook that are actually deleted. So just keep an eye each week as a student or each week as a parent, as to the changes that are happening on the CEO process. So moving on then to the application itself, the wonderful thing is the CEO is a very user-friendly. When you apply, you'll actually get a 8-digit application number, which will be 22 and then 6 digits. And everybody in 22 entry will be getting that CEO number with 22 and then 6 digits after it. That CEO number is private. The other number you'll get during the year is your Leaving Cert number, which is a 6-digit number if you're taking a Leaving Certificate. And then importantly, you'll get a password. And in some way, that's the link into the portal, to the CEO portal. And there's a demo website that you can actually try it out before you actually apply. And on that demo website, if you wish, you can kind of basically have a demo application, but the CEO will be asking you for various biographical information. It then will be asking you to tick the box to say, what is the category of applicant that you are? So it might be you're taking a Leaving Cert in 2022, you might be doing a French baccalaureate or a German abitur, and you'd be indicating that you're taking other school leaving exams or you're taking A-levels and so on. So the CEO will just want to know that you are actually taking the basis for your application. So all the details are there. And then when you actually pay a fee, you'll be getting a password, and that would be the opportunity for you to go back in each time after you apply. One of the things I just want to mention there is the aspect of, in terms of genuine order of preference, this is the key piece in the CEO. It's effectively where you're saying, what's the course I most want to do in the college I most want to be in? And that's basically here, number 1 on your level 8, if it's a level 8 course. And similarly, if it's a level 7/6 course, you're saying, what's the course I most want to do in the college I most want to be in? That's level 1. And the level 8 choices, computer, is going to look after level 8, and the level 7/6 computer is going to look after level 7/6, and it's going to try and get you the highest choice that you're entitled to. And basically what happens is then you'd say, if I just didn't get my first choice, what would be the next thing I'd wish? And that becomes number 2, and you work on down from 1 right down to 10. Now it's as important that your 6th preference is more important than your 7th more important than your 8th. And what happens sometimes is students just fill out a couple of choices and then leave it. But in fact, we'd be encouraging you, it's the same fee to apply for 1 choice as 20. So we'd be encouraging you to complete all of the choices there. What happens then is the CEO would close on the 1st of July, and that's basically the time when you actually have to have all of your choices in by that stage. One of the things I just want to mention is the statement of application record. And the CEO will send you an email to check that all of the details are right. And one of the first things to do is to make sure you're getting the CEO emails, because they will be emailing you during the year with important information. And what we found last year was there was hundreds of students missed out on important emails from the CEO because it went into their spam. So just check that you're getting your CEO emails from the CEO. It may be that you're applying for exemptions. It might be that you actually have perhaps dyslexia and you've applied through the National University of Ireland for an exemption in Irish. that would be recorded. The CEO will be saying, this is your leave insert number. And bear in mind that they're dealing with 85,000. So in some way, you as an applicant have to take responsibility to check that everything in the statement of record is absolutely correct. In terms, you might say, well, then how, John, are we actually going to, how are you going to count up my points? So the first thing we do is we take your maths, and if you're doing honours maths, and if you have a H6 or better, we add 25 points to your maths score. So say you had 46 points, we add 25 to that to give you 71 points. And then what we do is we rank the top 6 subjects. We put your grades and subjects in rank, and we take the top 6, and the aggregate of that gives you your point score. Now, as you can see here, as you move down from a H1 to a H2, it goes from 12 points down to 11, down to 10, and so on down. So the further you go up in this, you get more points and a higher differential. And so what happens is, although you might be taking 7 or 8 different subjects, we're going to take your best 6, having adjusted first for the maths. And we often get this question around the risk of, sometimes students say, will I stay with honours maths? If you get between 30 and 39.99%, you'll get the 37 points for a H7 in mathematics, but not the bonus. Whereas if you look across, if maybe you were switching and got an O2 or O1, but you have to be careful and weigh that up and maybe talk to your maths teacher and talk to the guidance counsellor as well in that regard. And then if you said, well, how are points determined? Basically, it's the number of people who apply for a particular course, the number of places on that course, and then how well do the people who have applied for the course, how well they do. And you can see here the maximum points is the 625, which is your 6 H1s perhaps, and your 25 extra for maths. But bear in mind that the average points is much less than that each year. If we look briefly at the points distribution in 2019, you can see it's a sort of a normal distribution here with a small number of people on the left-hand side, small number of people on the right-hand side, and the bulk of people in the middle. So it's like a normal distribution curve, and that was 2019. And then if we look at 2020, you can see that was the year whereby there wasn't a leave insert as such, and there was teacher accredited grades, and the points moved slightly over to the right, where more people, the actual curve moved over to the right-hand side, where more people were getting higher points. And then if we just chart the two together, you can see that difference between 2020, when there was no exams, the points in the Irish higher education, Irish leaving certificate, the distribution was higher. And then if we look and actually plot 2021 against it, you can see again, because this year students had the choice between taking the exam or taking the best of their teacher accredited grades, and the algorithm was taking the best of those. What we found was the points increased again, whereby there's a higher number of students getting higher grade, and the distribution moving over to the right-hand side there. It's very difficult. We can come back to it at the questions later, but very hard to know what will happen in 2022. And as a student, there's nothing in some way outside of your control. So you basically do the best that you can do, and then we can see what the points will be later on in August. I just want to briefly mention 2 schemes that are very important. One is called the Disability Access Route to Education, the DARE scheme. The other is called the Higher Education Access Route. And these are schemes that give concessions on points. And Maynooth University sets aside reserves of places. Now, you do have to apply before the 1st of February to tick the box for these schemes. Before the 1st of February, fill out the online material before the 1st of March. And then all of the supplementary information have to be sent into the CEO before the 15th of March. So as a parent, if a student is thinking about applying through the DARE scheme, sometimes there's medical consultant reports that have to be obtained. So maybe get busy and have those in place, because the deadline on here and there are sacrosanct. You cannot apply after those dates. In terms of the cost of college, what you find here is that to come to Maynooth University, the cost will be $3,150, but there is a SUSI grant for Irish citizens, or EU, in sense of the Student Universal Support Ireland will fund you. One of the things just to mention is that the payment of the $3,000 is paid in 2 installments in September and then in January. And one of the things just to say is that if parental income is below a certain threshold, about 50,000, the state will step in and give a student a grant to pay that fee, the student contribution charge, but also a maintenance grant as well. I should say, and you can see at the bottom, in a sense, where an EU citizen, some way, if you were here and you didn't attend lectures or take assignments or do any of the labs, and then came back the following year having to repeat, you do have to pay the tuition fee, which is about 4,000, and also the student contribution, so it can be expensive. So the important message we'd have is that make sure to do your research so you're doing the right qualification. One of the wonderful things here at Maynooth University is we've 1,200 departments. We welcome first years. We set aside 50% of our places for first years. And what happens is after the CAO round one, we release the campus accommodation at that stage, and they're filled up very, very quickly. So very briefly then, to summarize, there's the aspect of strict order of preference, studying all your preferences carefully, being careful with application deadlines and the change of mind, being conscious of restricted application courses. So if you're applying for a course that's restricted, it'll be noted in the handbook. And then the other thing just to make sure is to check that I am eligible for the courses. So for instance, if it's primary education here at the university, you have to have a H4 in Irish, so you have to be doing the Honours Irish paper. So in a sense, just check that you actually are eligible for the courses that you're applying for. So very briefly, I just want to show you an example of a student here. And that student has points total of a certain amount, and basically the person is applying across a range of courses here. You can actually have a look and see this student is applying for 10 different choices. And you might say, well, here's the first choice, will they get a place? What you find is that the points total required is higher than their points. And so when we look at it, what we find is that you might say, well, this person's going to get lots of choices and lots of courses because in many of their cases, they actually have more points than the cutoff. But what the CAO computer will do, and it does the same on the level 8 list as the level 7-6 list, it actually will say, what's the highest choice? Can I get the student a place in first choice? If not, then second. If not, maybe third. And as that case here, what basically happens is the CEO will say, yes, I can get the person an offer for their third preference. And what it does then is it actually deletes all the choices below. And this is why preference and genuine order of preference is so important. Because what happens each year is there's hundreds of students say, I've got my third preference, but the course I really want is my fifth. Can I have it? But unfortunately, that's removed from the CEO list because the student has a higher preference. So it's very, very important to have your choices in the right order. And one of the things that ways you might consider applying is a sense of very, very much that aspirational saying, what's the course I most want to do? Certainly have those up in your CEO. If I just didn't get those, maybe more realistic courses then in the middle. And then towards the end, you might say, if things went really badly for me, if things went, the questions and so on, if I wasn't feeling well and so on, what you really want to have is a sense of bank of courses towards the bottom to make sure that you have a place, because lots of really good courses, there's flexibility where you can progress on from them. So I just want to summarize by saying these are the key aspects of the CEO, the aspect that you can move up but never down. So if you are offered your third, yes, in the next round, you might get a higher preference. If you're offered your third preference in round 1 in mid-August for your third preference for your level 8 and third preference for level 7-6, you can only accept one of those. If a college hasn't filled all their places, then in round 2, it makes more offers, points fall, and you might move up in your preferences. And you're under no obligation to move to your higher preference. You can stay with the one you have, but you have to treat any offer as your last, because what can happen is maybe you might not accept your third preference. You assume you're going to get your second or first, but you don't. A couple of weeks later, you can't go back and say to the CEO, can I have it back? Because it's gone to somebody else. So there's about 5 rounds of offers, and each week there's ever decreasing numbers of offers. So you do have to look at each offer because it may be your last. And then just to mention random selection, and thankfully here at Maynooth University, we've no courses this year on random selection, but it's just simply whereby maybe there was 100 places on the course, the top 90 people had 400 points, and then there was 20 people on 399. What happens is the computer goes into those people, 20 people on 399, and picks out 10 people. So randomly selects from the people just below the cut. So what you find is everybody in 400 above got a place, and then on 399, there's random selection. And a couple of final things then, the aspect of available places is that here at Maynooth University, rarely we have some courses on available places, but it's a really good system where if you didn't get a place, there's like clearing, you can apply through the available places route. And if you've already applied and made an CEO application fee, there's no cost to go back in and take an application available place. And then obviously appeals, one of the things that we're very conscious here as Maynooth is we try to make good if a person got an upgrade to give them that place this year in the year that they get the upgrade, but if not, they may have to defer. And we would have about a number of deferrals each year of students, and we certainly work with them as they go. I just want to mention a couple of things here at the university in terms of the transition to the university to reassure you that in terms of the numbers of supports and the student services is really, really good here at the university in terms of budgeting and health centre, the counselling, chaplaincy, student support, very, very range of services for you. And then the other thing in terms of the academic side, the program advisory office in terms of helping you with your curriculum, the academic advisory, work placement, international careers, a significant number of services and colleagues right across the university to help you as you make that transition into the university. Just to mention again, one of the things we have is a range of opportunities for you to join us during the year. As I said earlier on, we have a CEO information evening in January, but also the hope of an on-campus open day in April and June this year. You'll hear more as the day goes on in terms of our MU Ask a Student opportunity and weekly webinars that we run as well. We'll pause now, Judith, if that's okay, and I'll stop the share and we'll take any questions if that's okay. Thanks again, Judith.
Hi, John. Thanks for that. Yeah, no questions have come in the official chat line yet, but we do encourage people to post your questions there if you have any.
Lovely.
Some questions that had come in earlier, though, just in terms of mature students can't apply for here and there. It's not open to them, but what supports are available for mature students in the university?
Yeah, so we have a mature student office. Thanks, Judith, for that. We have a mature student office, and the mature student officer is Shira. And so effectively what happens is mature in terms of pre-entry, Emer would be advising people in relation to what it's like to study at the university and the process around selection, and then also post-entry supports as well. I think the other thing we find with mature students is sometimes budgeting is also something that they need support with. And we have a student budgeting office as well as a number of bursaries. So one of the things that we're very strong on is that aspect of a student coming back to us maybe later in life because they didn't get a chance to come to us straight after school. And what we'd be saying, like, we have mature students here from 23 to 83, and there's never a point in your life where you can't come back and do that learning. We have some programs of part-time, but certainly the mature student office would be the full supports there as well. I think at this point, Judith, I might introduce Shira, just in terms of her own transition, and talk to us a little bit about the aspect of studying at the university and also her own experiences in that transition to college. So over to you, Shira.
Thank you, John. Hi, guys. My name is Shira Cannon, and I am a third-year LLB law student here at Maynooth. That's single major law. In the spirit of the transition to college, I should probably preface by saying, or by telling you a little bit more about how I came to Maynooth University. So the route that I took was a pretty traditional route. I went through the Leaving Cert, and it was around the time of the summer open days. And the CAO was open until July 1st at that time. And I still hadn't made a choice in terms of which university I should go to. So my guidance counselor suggested that I visit the summer open days for all of the universities. And as cliche as it sounds, I pretty much knew immediately as I came to Maynooth that this was where I wanted to be. This is the university that I wanted to go to. So if you haven't visited Maynooth before, or Maynooth University before, Maynooth University is a university, or Maynooth is a university town. And as someone who grew up in rural areas her whole life and small towns from Galway to Waterford, this was almost a home away from home. And it kind of gave me the confidence to come up here alone and know that there was a place for me. I talked to many people at the open day. I talked to lecturers, I talked to student ambassadors, and I talked to students. But following the open day, there was still some questions that I had to ask. And at the time, the MU Ask a Student portal wasn't open. So I thought the best way to ask my questions is to ring up the law department and ask, who should I talk to? And that's exactly what I did. I said, these are my questions. Who do you think that I should talk to? And they had directed me on to numerous different people within the department. And I exchanged email correspondence with them in terms of getting my questions answered. One person who actually gave me a call and took the time to explain how the LLB course works was Dr. Fergus Ryan, who is a prominent figure in the law department. And I just knew following this call, just with how open and welcoming and warm people at Maynooth University were, that this was my place. And since then, from a student's perspective, not much has changed. Maynooth University is one of those rare places where if you stop a random student at, in front of a building and ask, what building is this? Or I need to go here. Where do you think, what route should I take? Or how should I get here? They will take the time to explain to you where you should be going. There was many, many times when I was a first year where I kind of stopped and I was so lost. I didn't know who to ask, where to go. And people came up to me by themselves on their own accord to ask, are you lost? Where do you need to go? So that was a really, really great experience. And I know that we're in a bit of an unfortunate situation where we don't really know what the future holds, but I suppose I'm here to not only reassure you, but to tell you that no matter what teaching environment that you're in, there is still opportunities to grasp and lessons to learn, no matter if you're in person full time, if you're online full time, or if you're in a hybrid environment. I think one of the main skills that I have learned, and I know many other students have learned, is independence. The way that it ran is that I only had 6 months in first year. So 6 months isn't a very long time when you think of it. And I don't think that I had experienced as much as I did when I was online. I think that I was able to make a few friends by going into lectures, sitting down next to people and asking them if they wanted to go for coffee or if they wanted to attend a society event. But I think that I actually met more people online, and that was through my own initiative that I learned. I reached out to people on course group chats and asked if they wanted to form study groups. I even talked to lecturers at the end of their office hours and I said, oh, do you think it's a good idea to form a study group? And would you mind just giving a slight shout out that if people do want to form a study group, that they should put so on the Moodle page, or they can reach out to me personally. And I met a lot of students that way. Chances are that a lot of students feel the same way that you do. They're nervous about, going from an environment that they were really comfortable in secondary school or any other environment that they were in previously, and now being placed into university. It is an experience where you will be nervous, and that's okay, but you can take this opportunity and you don't have to limit your student life or limit your college experience just by being online. Clubs and societies were a very, very big part of my college experience and will continue to do so until I finish at Maynooth University. Clubs and societies have been running this whole time. Student life was never compromised. It was never limited or restricted. Our events shifted to being online. And I think that there was merit in that as well, because when I attended events in person, I was very nervous about attending them alone. And prior to actually, becoming a student ambassador and doing my course, I wouldn't have been very confident in public speaking or confident at all. And I think that I thought, oh, when I come into events alone, I don't want anyone to notice and say why is she coming into events alone? Or I don't want anyone to be reluctant to talk to me because I'm alone. And I think that experience was mostly in my head. It was what I was feeling. I bet you nobody even noticed. And my student experience has been just positives and highs. And even just from being online, I think that students have put great effort into making sure that clubs and societies are still running. Even if they aren't physical events, there are meet and greets and coffee mornings, and there's an environment where you can still meet students. I think that a lot of your transition to college and, the reason why it would be good or, that it could turn into something good is the people that you meet along the way. So I'm not sure if anyone has any specific questions in terms of anything that I may have brushed over very quickly, but if they do, I'm more than happy to take them, and you're more than welcome to ask.
Shira, that's lovely. So what we might do, Judith, I see there's lots of questions coming through there.
Yeah.
So there might be questions for Shira or myself. I'm very conscious that you've answered a lot of the questions as they've been coming in. And folks, we've just been joined by our colleague, Dr. Laura Creavy, who's the school's liaison officer. So between the four of us, we're going to try and cover any of the bases for you. So I'm not sure, Judith, if there's anyone just for the kind of an open forum type question that would help people.
There's a sort of a few on a theme really, John, in terms
Sure.
of the acceptance period. So how long do you have to accept or decline an offer? And also just how does it work in terms of accepting any offer as if it is your last? Just could you
Yes.
back over
No,
that?
that's lovely. So what will happen in the first round, because about whatever 40,000 offers are made in the first round, people would normally have a few days, 6 or 7 days, to accept the offer. And there'll be a timestamp on it that you'll get when you're offered your place. It'll say this is live till 5:15 or 3 p.m. or whatever on a particular day. And then it shuts down, and literally you might be offered your level 8 and level 7-6, and those two offers are live until that moment, and then they elapse. And then about 2 or 3 days later, the admissions officers make more offers if they haven't filled their places. But in the second round, the acceptance window could have shortened, because at that stage the colleges are about to start. So the second round and third round, the shorter, so it might be 2 or 3 days at that stage. Then the aspect, Judith, you mentioned about, what if it's my 10 choice? One of the things we were saying is, when you're offered and you accept, everything above is still in play, things below are gone. The only exception would be if there's an available place course that you want, you can introduce that back into your selection set. So I don't know if I've answered that well enough, Judith, but that sense whereby, yes, there's a timeline and you do have to get your acceptance in. Yeah.
Great, John, thank you. Yes, and if you have an exemption from Irish, but your course requires Irish, can you still get into that course?
Absolutely. So for all of our courses, the only exception would be primary teaching, where you have to have a H4 in Irish. But for every other one of our degrees, if you have an exemption, and even though we say in the prospectus that you need Irish, what happens is the computer will skip over and not require you to have Irish. Now, just be careful, because sometimes in school, a person has exemption from Irish, but an exemption from the National University of Ireland is something that you have to make an application to the NUI in Merrion Square, and it has to be confirmed to you by the CAO as well. Now, under GDPR, you'll be telling the CAO that you allow the NUI to communicate with the CAO and vice versa. And then there was another question there, Judith, I wouldn't mind just mentioning. I mean, I'm conscious there's some nervousness around what would the points be like in 2022. And we here, Judith, Laura, myself, nobody knows for sure what the points would be like in 2022. As a sixth-year student this year, you're just trying to do your best. Yes, there will be some students from 2021 and 2020 and so on applying again, but that would be the same for every year. There's about 8,000 people apply from previous years. So in some way, we just don't know. I mean, obviously this year, they were inflated a little bit because of the teacher effect and the fact you could take exams. So, and if it's just exams, but in a sense, we'd be very careful not to make any commitment, because that would be wrong for us to do, because at the end of the day, it'll be the State Exams Commission that will release the results. Thanks, Judith. I'm not sure if there's any other questions at all.
Yeah, if you think you won't get the points for a course, should you still put it first on your CAO?
I would, and I'll tell you why. Because what can happen is you do much better than you expect. You think, oh, I'm not going to, but literally the CEO, because what the awful thing would be, you say, I won't get the points, I'll put it down number 6 or 10 or whatever. And then you do get the points, and you begin saying, well, why didn't I put it number 1? So the most important thing is to put the course you most want number 1, because literally this year people got better results than they expected, and a lot of people then lost out because they had that sense of I better not. Absolutely put the course you want number 1 and go for it. Yeah.
When do the restricted courses assessments for music take place?
So that's going to be in the springtime. So we'll be writing out to you. We get the file from the CEO on the 8th of March. We'll be writing to you in the middle of March and giving you maybe a 3 or 4 week window to return the assessment. So between the middle of March and the middle of April, you'll be sending back a remote audition, which will be assessed by our colleagues in the music department.
John, I'm going to have to exit stage left now.
Yeah, so Laura, if you're, Judith,
Laura.
thank you very much. And the best of luck with our School of Business webinar starting at 11.
Perfect. John, are you happy for me to ask a couple more questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, brilliant. So there is one to say, if I get the points for the course that I want in Maynooth and it's my first choice, is there a chance I won't get it?
No. So if it's your first choice and you get the points, the only exception would be if you hadn't got one of the program requirements. So say we're looking for a H5 in media studies in English, and you had 600 points, but had a H6 in English. No, absolutely. If you get the points and it's your first preference, and you have the entry requirements and you have the matriculation requirements, you're guaranteed that place for sure. Yeah.
I suppose it was just maybe in case of the the number of places available on the course might have been.
Oh yeah, in terms of maybe random selection, but random selection will be rare here at the university. We try and not have random selection, so there could be an outside chance of random selection, but it's very rare. Yeah.
And then just someone asking, how long does the work placement usually occur for? Like, how long is the actual period of work placement?
So often it's a year long, say in the business school, but sometimes it's maybe 3 months or 6 months, say in our chemistry or pharmaceutical chemistry or biotechnology. So depending on the degree, there are variations, but more often than not, it's basically 1 year. So you finish up in May, you'd start your placement maybe September until the following May. So in a sense, they're typically year long, Laura. Yeah.
Perfect. And there's just one more at the moment. I know you have to head off as well. Actually, there's 2 more, but I can probably cover that one. Just someone asking about, do they actually need to pay the CAO application fee to actually be able to submit their application? They had started the application, but it didn't save without payment. Yeah.
So unfortunately, until the moment that you pay, your application isn't actually live. And what I'd be saying is when you go through the process, at the very end of it, you're paying the application fee. It's at that moment your application is confirmed by the CEO. Every point up to that, until the application fee is paid, that application doesn't exist on the CEO system. Okay, it sits in what's called a temporary file, but then it's thrown out because they'll only work with applicants who've actually paid the fee. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that discounted application rate is, to be benefited from as well.
So it's €30. Get it in before the 20th of January at 5:15. So Laura, if you don't mind, I have to go to set up, folks, the webinar for the social science. We'd love if you can join us, but most importantly, I think my colleague Laura will explain and hear the sort of schedule later on today. We'd love you to move around because this is a day for you. So pick from the schedule the elements that you want. So you can move between webinars, different times, different subjects, and you can hop in and out of various things that you want. Because most importantly, it's a day for you to get all of your questions answered. We have a Q&A that's happening as well, so put in the questions on the live Q&A as well, but also your questions. We love questions. That's what we're here for. I'm going to say bye-bye, leave you in the capable hands of my colleague, Dr. Laura Creavy and Shira Cannon, and wish you well. So if it's okay, I'm going to leave the webinar now.
Perfect.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay, everyone. So yeah, thanks for staying with us. If there's any more questions you want to send in, please do. We've got a few more minutes. And obviously, if there's anything that you would like to get here as perspective on from the student, be it kind of more law specific or obviously from the student perspective, there is a question just regarding countries you can go abroad with. So yeah, it's a huge range. There's over nearly 200 different institutes we've links with around the world. So Europe, North America, South America, Australia. And the way it works is you can actually apply in second year to go abroad, which is quite nice because I guess I find it gives students a little bit more time to figure out if this is something that they'd like to apply for. We have an Erasmus office and an international office, and they're there absolutely to assist students with that and kind of speak to you about where you might like to go to, and obviously where previous students maybe have gone to study particular subjects and where it might be of interest. Okay, so there is a question, if you fail Irish, can you get into Maynooth University? So there is a pass in Irish is one of the basic entry requirements, one of your minimum entry requirements to get into. You do need to pass Irish unless you have that language exemption that my colleague John McGinnity mentioned there. So a pass in Irish and a pass in English are basic entry requirements. You do need to achieve those. Let me have a look. There is a law-based one to make sure. I'll have a look now and see here. It might be for you. Now, it could be a bigger question. Are the strands of law studied abroad in the choice language or English when studying law and French? Okay, so I don't know if you've experienced here with any of that or wanting to go abroad or explore that, or if you want me to take it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think you can take this.
Yeah, no, it's a bit more complicated. I mean,
yeah.
for the most part, the vast majority of institutes, if we're talking about going abroad to study, the vast majority of institutes do study in English, and this is obviously a benefit to ourselves. For a lot of French institutes, they do actually have a lot, particularly France, of all institutes, all countries do have a lot that actually still is maintained through French. So again, that is something that I would, if you were on campus, say, obviously speak to the law department about, speak to the Erasmus office about, and they'll be able to advise you as to what, you know, might work best for you, whether you do want to go and learn through French or whether if you're hoping to learn through English. So there's lots of options there. Okay, so here, this one is for you. Is there a nice community among the students at Maynooth, and is there many events that happen during the year for students, like nights out or days out, so different events?
Yeah, so there absolutely is a very nice community among the students here at Maynooth. Student life is something that I think we pride ourselves on in terms of events. So I suppose there's three ways that I can, or three kind of answers to this. Firstly would be through clubs and societies. Clubs and societies will almost always organize events such as mixers or, you know, networking events or something where you can get to know other students outside of what that society is about. So for example, for Law Society, the event doesn't have to be law-based. We still hold meet and greets and, you know, networking events, etc. And I know that many other societies do the same. The second, I suppose, way to meet students or get into the community at Maynooth would be through students' union events. I know that they've held discos, they've held networking events, they've held events during the day and during the evening. So those are all advertised even on campus and online throughout the year. And then lastly, there is a space for you to kind of go out outside of the university. I know that there are days when collectively everyone decides, oh, we're all going out this night, and it could be, for example, Halloween or Christmas. I know that there's a university Christmas day as well. So there is many different routes for you to take and many opportunities for you to get into that community at Maynooth and make friends and meet people.
Perfect, thank you, Hira. So again, just there's a follow-up question about the Irish that I mentioned, about Irish being a requirement. The question is, if you fail Irish, but it's not one of your 6 subjects, one of the 6 subjects that you're obviously counting for your points matriculation, it is still an entry requirement. Okay, so even if you're not planning to study it at university, it is, the university requires a pass in Irish and a pass in English as part of the entry requirements, unless you have that exemption. So absolutely, it is. Okay, so hopefully that has helped you. There is 1 or 2 more. I am conscious of time and people might want to grab a cup of tea before you go on to the next couple of webinars, and I want to tell you about them. So we'll just take 1 or 2 more. So for EU applicants, it's just a question of, is there a preferred qualification for covering the English language requirement? There's quite a few different ones, and you can see that on our website. We have a section for EU applicants, but things like TEFL, the test of English language, or English as a foreign language. We have the International English Language Testing System as well. So there's a number of different criteria. So I definitely recommend obviously having a look and see which one is more specific and relevant to you. And then let's see if I can get 1 more in. So if I want to study psychology and I do the Bachelor of Arts degree, would I still be able to do psychology in second year? So this is a very common question that we get. So we have 2 specialised accredited psychology degrees at the university. So MH 106 psychology through arts and MH 209 psychology through science. They are specialised accredited degrees. They have accreditation with the Psychological Society of Ireland. Separate to that, we have the Bachelor of Arts degree, MH 101, where you can study a subject called psychological studies. Okay, so you would study psychological studies if you're interested, and another subject throughout, and you would graduate with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychological Studies and another subject. Quite different to the specialised psychology degrees, in the sense if you're studying half the amount of psychology the student doing the specialised psychology degree will be studying. So you don't get the same accreditation from the Psychological Society of Ireland if you study this subject within the arts degree. But we do have a 1-year master's conversion course in psychology that you can do after the arts degree that actually gets you this accreditation that naturally comes with the specialised degrees, and then you're the same as the people that did the specialised degree. So it's 1 year longer. So it's a very common route and pathway, and it is competitive to get into because a lot of people do like to choose this route, but again, it's definitely a really good option. Okay, I'm quite conscious of time, and I know that I have another webinar to jump onto as well. So just to highlight a few of the things, first of all, to say thank you for all for joining us. Thank you to Dr. John McGinnity and Judith Caffrey for all the information, and to Shira for her story. The student perspective is always really important, and I think it's really valuable to students to actually hear. So next, there's business degrees available. We have our science and engineering webinars, there's psychology, there's different subjects within the arts degree if you're interested. We have our social sciences subjects as well. There's postgraduate courses available if there's obviously anyone interested in further study. And then again, later throughout the day, there's an education webinar that I'm hosting. There's a law and criminology webinar. There's more information about studying abroad at 12 o'clock. Again, there's a couple of questions about that, so that could be really relevant. And then there is at 1:15, there's information about the arts degree. So one of our big broad entry programs, lots of flexibility, lots of choice. Our new degree programs for 2022 as well. And then opportunities to meet the students. And again, I think that's a really nice option for students to actually get in and get the student perspective. Okay, well, thank you very much for all your attention. Again, hopefully I got through most of the questions. If there is more you want to follow up with, please do contact the admissions office. So it's admissions@mu.ie, and we'd be more than happy to help you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Guys.
Thank you.